This is Dr. Clay Owens, your CSU CITC professor. This is our live online session 2, Changing Business Landscapes. As we begin tonight, I would like to spend a few minutes reviewing with you the requirements for our work. Work is to be turned in, done in APA style. There are a number of things that need to be kept in mind with this. Reminders about that now. There will be several examples that I'll give, and your fellow students can help you a lot with this because they do understand, for the most part, what's going on with APA style. Just a few students who don't, and I want to throw out just a few reminders to you about this. It's a reminder to students concerning what APA style means for their papers submitted in this course. Papers should have a cover sheet. On that cover sheet, it should be your name, your student ID number, the assignment number, the unit it goes with, the course and section numbers, along with any other identification information that you wish to include. But you must have these items present. The running headline at the top is okay and should not include the words running head. Some more reminders about APA style for your papers. The body of the paper should be double spaced with left side margins, right side margins, top and bottom margins being around 1 inch. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. The paper should not be right justified. Paragraphs should have a uniform space indentation. They might be 5 spaces. Sometimes people use 7 or 9 spaces. Anything is okay as long as you are consistent and do the same thing every paragraph on every page. A few more APA style reminders. The font should be a 12 font from the APA list of approved fonts. This professor, regardless of APA, prefers Times New Roman 12, Courier 12, or New Courier 12. Grades will not be deducted for using other fonts unless they make the paper very difficult to read. The ending references list should be spaced out per the APA guidelines. Left side start, second line indented for each item, all double spaced. The body of the paper should be double spaced. Uniformity makes it much easier to read and understand student work. Learning to follow these APA rules will help you in your future academic work and work careers. APA questions can be answered through the CSU Writing Center. If the Writing Center is non-responsive enough or does not answer the question completely to your satisfaction, you may contact me, Clay Owens at columbiasouthern.edu, for information regarding your APA style questions. The content of the course is important. The format, APA style, which the students use to communicate that understanding of the content, is equally important. Communication is a primary skill that must be mastered by MBA students. Majority of the students are following the system well and have grades that reflect that success. There are just a few people who are off base, and those have been addressed directly to them in their grading and comments. If you have questions regarding APA style, please start with fellow students, the tutors, the CSU Writing Center, or with me, your professor. We'll now begin with our lecture number 2, talking about size of different places. Due to globalization, organizations have now become interdependent and therefore are accountable for the social, environmental, and political challenges that threaten to affect the future we all share. It's one world, and we're all in it. And if something bad happens to the atmosphere or to the oceans, it could affect us all. There are about 80,000 multinational companies and 10 times as many subsidiaries in the world now. I know that when Boeing opened their factory here for assembling planes, that was one company, but there were about 100 companies that opened up to supply things to Boeing. Same idea when the Mercedes truck van plant opened here. Many additional companies opened up to provide services to them, to ship parts for them, to ship assembled trucks out. And we're seeing the same thing now as the Volvo Cars plant is opening up. Lots of support companies that go with these things, and they have a worldwide reach for parts procurement and for shipping out vehicles. Our state also has the BMW automobile plant in the upper part of the state. Those vehicles that are exported and go around the world are brought here to my city and put on ships to be sent out. Some come in by truck, most come in by railroad and are taken right out to beside the ships and then are loaded individually into the cargo holds. There are countless small and medium businesses all over the world that take part in supporting different things. Organizations face many challenges. The ethical challenges for business organizations include these 4 main items that we're going to talk about. The first one is labor standards. You see here a picture in the United States about 100 years ago of children working in a textile plant. This kid is sweeping. This biggest one is running the machine. These 2 smaller ones are handling bobbins and cleaning bobbins. The United States has only been away from this for a short time. The United States is big at throwing rocks and talking trash about people because they use child labor. But let me tell you, the worst critics are the ones that just quit doing something themselves. So the United States has not been very long out of this child labor business themselves. Human rights. The ethical challenges for organizations and businesses include the idea of human rights. And again, in this photo example that I used, it's this small girl running 2 big spinning machines, having to reach way up and way down. Very difficult work, very dangerous work. I worked in factories like this for many years myself. It's a very, very hard place to earn a living. And here's another person running the big spinning frames. You can see how big they are compared to his short height. Human rights. Another ethical challenge for business organizations include the concept of climate change. I am a little bit of a climate change skeptic in some ways. I do believe that the climate is changing. I do not believe that pollution has caused it to change. The climate has changed many times over history. There have been ice ages where the planet froze over. There have been heat waves from meteorites and things crashing on the earth and the dust going up and blocking the sun, and all the dinosaurs died. There have been all kinds of climate changes in the past that were caused by many different things. So just blaming it all on people is just a little bit convenient. I haven't figured out what the end game is, but there really is something going on there. Something that's got an agenda about it that I don't understand. But climate change is real. It is happening. But the reasons for it are different. I recently saw a nice article about how everybody said climate change was happening because the ozone layer had a hole in it. Well, in the last year, the ozone layer doesn't have a hole in it anymore. So I don't know what the deal is. I guess we're going to be all of a sudden cured. However, organizations face many challenges. The ethical challenges for business organizations include marketplace integrity, being honest, having principles, using good words to describe your product, not lying to people, being fair about what you sell them. The digital internet is a hugely influential and effective media to publicize the negative aspects of a business. There are websites in the United States that all they do is exist for people to complain. There's one about Walmart, where everybody that wants to say something about bad about Walmart can go in and tell about it. Most big companies have someone who is upset with them and has opened up one of these websites. People can do it sort of anonymously and really stir up some trouble if they decide to. Consumers, employees, and activists can now utilize digital means like the internet and Facebook if they find that a business's ethical standards are unacceptable. If a business treats someone unfairly, the word can get out. If you're looking to do business with a company that you've never done business with before, you might go online and check and see what's being said about them by some of their existing customers. And remember that some people are just trying to start trouble, but some people are giving an honest opinion of a problem. Also be aware that if you go out and apply for a job somewhere, it is very likely that the human resources department at that company will check what they can find out about you online and on Facebook and other systems. They will want to know what you've been doing. So those pictures of you heisting beers and chasing people around on a bar might cause you a problem later on. There are many pressure groups that help police business organizations as well. There are international pressure groups, one named Oxfam, that has gone from focusing on government policies to now focusing on the business policies of global companies. There is a lot of outside pressure to uphold ethical standards. You see here people raising their hand to try and tell you something bad about someone. And then here's an old Wild West sheriff's badge for the United States, a authorized investigator or police officer who might be able to wield some legal power. Responding to the new global challenges requires more than a short-term arrangement. Organizational leaders need to respond to competing priorities, such as returns to shareholders and responsibilities to the environment or the community. Stockholders, and then you see like the man, the woman, the child, and the grandfather. Older people, young people, and working people. Businesses have a need to think about all of them when they're dealing with things. Things that may go bad later, things that work out well in the present, and things that are always a problem. It is very difficult to always know what's going on. Remember, the Nike case is part of your course and includes an assignment related to that reading and video. Nike had once become famous for being exploitative of sweatshop labor in developing countries. Initially, it refused to accept the responsibility and tried to blame it on the suppliers and the contractors. But now the company has become a champion in setting standards. Nike has raised standards in some countries and has allowed competitors to access its methodologies to learn about their ethical processes. Sometimes you take something bad and you turn it around and make it a strong point for you if you can. For people that have completed that article, I've sent a couple of things. One was a news article from Vietnam about child care services now being provided at some Nike plants for employees. It's an excellent move. It's one of the things that helps people maintain and do well. There's a global financial crisis in the 2008-2009 timeframe. It was largely initiated by poor business decisions made by boards of directors of reputable companies and the executives of financial and industrial sectors. Now, I have a little bit different take on this from some people, and I'm going to tell you about it. Some people disagree with me, but I have information that makes me think that I am correct. This is President Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton caused the 2008-2009 financial crisis. This was based on policies that he put into place regulating banks and loan companies during his terms as president. He made rules that the banks would be investigated for discriminating against people. The government would charge them with illegal discrimination if they refused to lend money to poor people who couldn't pay it back. I know it sounds crazy, but that is what he did. It was a very liberal, very poorly thought out process. President Clinton's tenure was characterized by economic prosperity and financial deregulation, which in many ways set the stage for the excesses of later years. One of his biggest strokes of freewheeling capitalism was the Gramm-Leachy-Billy Act, which repealed a Depression-era regulation. He also signed the Commodity Futures Modernization Act, which exempt credit default, which for someone loses money, swaps from being regulated. He wrote the rules in 1995 for the Community Reinvestment Act, which put added pressure on banks to lend money in low-income neighborhoods. It is the subject of heated political and scholarly debate whether these moves are to blame for the economic troubles, but they certainly played a role in creating a permissive lending environment that led to the problems that happened later. Here is a web link to an interesting article. It's very good, from Time magazine, which generally is a liberal magazine that supports people like President Clinton. But they wrote about this article agreeing with what I'm saying. Institutional compensation practices gave way to a new type of ethical business management practice that did not undermine the potential negative impacts of a business. It was also seen as a crisis in institutional integrity, where both business and its regulators failed to protect society. Excessive executive compensation has been a real problem. As a result, businesses are now being more severely scrutinized by the global monitoring organizations. They are pulling out the magnifying glass and looking at the details of the results, not just accepting it at face value. There are many things that happen, and generally they result in additional scrutiny. Scrutiny means someone is looking at something very carefully. They are taking each detail apart. They are doing their best to find something wrong with it. They're not just looking it over, they're nitpicking it in extreme detail. Scrutinized. Organizational culture risk. The occurrence and effects of financial compensation has led many boards to think more about compliance than performance. The management of organizations is focusing towards reducing unethical practices and not just increased profitability. You see them sitting around the table talking and trying to decide what to do about a situation. Economic success is no longer the only measurement of an organization's efficiency. Moreover, defaulting to only doing what is legal does not meet the standard anymore. As a result, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Starbucks are finding backlashes in the United Kingdom where they have been accountable for their adherence to tax minimizing actions which offshore their profits. They're trying to hide their profits and not pay taxes. And that's always a problem, especially in some of these countries like the UK, where they have so many people who don't work and who are paid by the government so that they can live. Google, Apple, Amazon, and Starbucks are the ones listed here. Top ethical issues confronting business institutions today revolve around these 11 items. As you notice, I like to do numbered lists. It's just the way I am about things. I find it keeps me organized and keeps me on track. Number one, insider trading, we talked about last time. One of the most famous insider trading accounts was the arrest of Martha Stewart, who's a home decorating expert in the United States. Martha Stewart has a lot of money. She has homes in New York and then out in the Hamptons. She owns a number of businesses. Someone that she knew called and talked to her and told her that she should buy stock in a certain company because they thought something good was going to happen at that company. Well, it ended up that person knew a lot about what was going to happen at that new company, and Martha bought some of the stock. Martha got a lot of profit on that because there's a big merger and things. Then, when they started tracing out the telephone records of the people that made big money doing that, they found that she had made a lot of money, and they arrested her. Trading stocks because you know something is going to happen to the stock can be considered illegal in the United States. The top ethical issues confronting business institutions today revolve around number two, illegal political contributions. In the United States, a big part of who gets voted in relates to how much money they spend on television advertising, direct mail advertising, publication advertising in newspapers and magazines, and direct mail. All of the money that they can gather in helps them do a better job of getting their positions out to the voters. In the United States, there are limits as to how much money any one particular person or one particular company can give to one particular candidate. Sometimes you'll see something about, oh, they took $500 from so-and-so, so that means they're going to do something illegal for them. Well, it's going to take a lot more money than that for someone to decide to do something illegal. The top ethical issues confronting business institutions today revolve around number three, environmental violations. You can see here where a lot of stuff has been dumped in this waterway, lots of trash, sewage. I've worked for companies where they had to strictly follow environmental rules, and sometimes even after they followed the rules, the government would still come back and fine them and say that they didn't follow them close enough. Or they would come back 20 years later and say, oh, you followed the rules, but we're going to fine you anyway. The government in the United States can just go ahead and do what they want to do sometimes. You can fight them in court and you can do all kind of things to try and handle it, but it just doesn't always work out. Top ethical issues confronting business institutions today revolving around number 4, health or safety violations. I have worked in factories where we had to wear these masks like we're wearing now because of COVID. We had to wear those all the time because of dust in the air from cotton fibers that were being produced. We have to wear safety glasses because of it sometimes. In other plants where I've worked, there were chemical hazards where you had to wear hoods and masks and rubberized gloves and aprons and steel-toed boots. Sometimes I worked at Kemet Electronics. They worked about your hair or skin getting into the electronic products. So you had to dress up and wear clean suits and masks and head covers and foot covers to keep you from contaminating the product. There are also safety violations related to emergency doors being locked where people can't get out in case of a fire. Just a lot of issues to worry about. Huge government agencies in the United States handle these things, but for the most part, all they can do is react to complaints from employees to check out a place or from someone getting hurt or killed in a workplace. Much of it is after the fact. Top ethical issues confronting business institutions today revolve around improper contracts. There are different things that you do. People make behind the back payoffs to get favoritism in dealing with contracts. Sometimes the best price and the best quality are not what gets you the contract. So much purchasing, so much authority at lower levels sometimes. The whole thing is purchasing is just open for improper contracts. Payoffs, bribes, kickbacks. Sometimes a person will own a part of a company that they steer business to. Just a lot of things that go on. Another top ethical issue confronting businesses today revolves around contract violations. People may have contracts with their employees to pay them at certain rates. They may have a union contract to deal with all the employees a certain way. They may get around some of these by hiring temporary employees instead of regular full-time employees. All kinds of ways to get around paying these promised wages. The same may be true in profit sharing agreements. The same may be true in bonus agreements. I hear lots of talk of people setting up a bonus system for the year, and then about halfway through the year, the employees are going to get a big bonus, so the companies step in and change the rules mid-year. I've had that happen to me personally, and it truly cost me a good bit of money. It took me a while, but I ended up having to just go work for another company that I felt would be more honest. Another top ethical issue is the improper use of competitors' information. You can see where they're spying on a worker, trying to see what he's doing. This is there used to be a comic book that came out monthly in the United States called MAD, M-A-D magazine. And basically it's a satire type magazine. And back in the 60s, they started having these characters, spy versus spy, where one was going to blow the other one up, and they were always spying on each other. Corporate espionage is a big deal. I'm reading a book right now about 2 large New York law firms. It's a novel, and they're implanting years ahead some people to spy on a big case that's coming up. It's a very interesting concept, but corporate spying, corporate espionage are big. Trying to take employees away from a company that knows secrets are a big thing. In the United States, a lot of people work with what is called a non-compete agreement. That means that you promise that if you leave the company, you are not going to go work for a company that makes the same kind of product and competes for the same customers, or you promise not to do that, take a job like that for at least so many years. I know when I left Kemet Electronics, I had some people call me from Kyocera. They had a factory not too many, maybe 150 miles away from where I was. And I talked to them a while, but once they found out that I was in the operations end, that I did not have any chemical formulas, that I did not have any electronics information, they didn't want to talk to me anymore. So they were out to do something crooked. Top ethical issues confronting business institutions today is number 8, revolves around anti-competitive practices. This could include setting up a monopoly, forcing small competitors out of business through honest and dishonest means, destroying your competition by blowing them up, hiring people to stop the other company from doing things. Another issue to consider is sexual harassment. You see where this guy's talking down to the woman, this guy's putting his hands on the woman, these people are furries playing a game. All could be considered sexual harassment in certain circumstances and inappropriate. It is hard to legislate this. All you can do is respond to complaints. Make sure that your company has policies that say we do not want people doing this, and then do your best to set a good example. Many places you see that there are people who continue to do these things. It's not good. Another top item is substance abuse. A number of you have written about the products that are unsafe and unhealthy that people sell. Some of them are illegal and legal injection drugs. Some are different types of beer and alcohol. These are real things, substance abuse. I think that smoking is going to start being considered substance abuse soon because it is so destructive to one's health. I know people that have smoked all their lives and never get sick from it. I know people that just smoke for a couple of years and all of a sudden they have all these terrible problems. It just depends on the individual and how things work out. And this is sort of like a David Letterman show. Those are the top 10 ethical issues confronting business institutions today. And we're going to give you a bonus, number 11. The top ethical issues confronting business institutions today revolve around stealing. We talked a little bit about stealing before. Sometimes people steal items from work, pencils, pens, pads, papers, computers. Sometimes people steal products from work that they're manufacturing or that are stocked in the company, in the store. Sometimes people do personal business on company time, personal phone calls, shopping online, doing these kind of things. All of these technically are stealing, and it's an issue to consider because even if you feel bad about it, you hide your face. And that's what these two people are doing, hiding their faces. Can organizational culture become a bottleneck? Ethical culture. The New York Times published an article at the head of a business in Europe in March 2012. He said Goldman Sachs had a toxic and destructive culture. He said that he resigned because the firm had become a place where profit was more important than all other considerations. What was good for the firm and good for making money is all that mattered. There are some limitations to corporate compliance with ethics. Business ethics challenge the cultural legitimacy businesses such as agency theory. Agency theory says that managers need to be incentivized for them to deliver maximum shareholder benefits. Means that you get an incentive, you get a bonus. Amoral management can be both intentional and unintentional. Intentional amoral management practices occur when businesses and ethics are considered to be two different things. Unintentional amoral management emerges when managers fail to predict the impacts of their decisions and actions. So one is where they're not considered at all, and the other is when they're unable to foresee what happens. Not everybody can see into the future. You don't always know what your decisions are going to cause to happen, but you need to do your best to make a reasonable effort to figure it out. You need a car wreck, people get hurt, someone slips and falls over something on the floor, you should have picked it up so they wouldn't fall. Research suggests that employee ethics are dynamic. That means they're changing all the time, and that the behavioral cues of employees are taken from the social messaging of their organization in order to succeed. So who they see being promoted, who they see getting bonus money, they're going to try to act the same way those people act. It goes back to the old adage in the zoo of monkey see, monkey do. If this works for him, it's going to work for me. If this works for him getting a bonus, this might work for me getting a bonus. If lie, cheat, and steal is what a company wants us to do and gives rewards for, then maybe I need to start lie, cheat, and steal. It's the way to get promoted. Social psychology highlights that many people are likely to commit serious unethical acts in situations that are embedded in workplace hierarchy systems. This is due to being depersonalized in a large workplace and allows individuals to disavow personal accountability. Oh, it's company policy. Oh, the orders came from upstairs. It came from the executive suite. Oh, it came from the top floor. The managers and employees can behave inconsistently across different situations. This is called the Argentic shift and was called that by Stanley Milgram. Obedience to authority from Yale, and later supported by a prison experiment. It suggests that there can be an erosion of agency in an organization to the point when individuals simply do what they're told. They don't think about it, they don't question it. It's almost like a military battlefield. People just fall in line and do what they're told. We'll talk about a few examples of unethical practices that we see. UBS Bank was fined $29.7 million for failures in its systems and controls that allowed an employee to conduct a big bank fraud. You see the bank building and the guy running off with the money. They agreed to pay $1.92 billion to settle the charges of transferring money to countries that were blocked. By not following the guidelines, UBS HSBC enabled Mexican drug cartels to launder dirty drug money through American financial systems, and it also worked with prohibited Saudi Arabian banks that were linked to terrorist organizations that had attacked the United States. So there were just several ways that this money was getting out. Barclays Bank was fined $290 million for manipulating key interest rates. That'd be bumping the rates up and down to increase loans or to increase savings by people. Business ethics as the basis of business strength. Business leaders now believe that there are many preventive measures which should be leveraged to diminish market failure. The boards and business leaders now accept their role in building institutional integrity capital, making themselves look good for the long term, developing integrity capital, a good reputation of being an ethical company. This makes sure that managers are capable of managing the ethical perspectives in business decisions. There is a critical role of middle managers in believing the need for change and to be champions of that change. If the big fish goes this way, the little fish follow. Talk about that middle managers and lower level managers are really key to making these things work. They are the ones that are closer to the employees. They see the employees every day. The employees see what they think and do. And so they're the ones that the employees will follow and emulate. Organizations with integrity capital have low levels of misconduct and more reporting when employees do witness something that's wrong. Integrity capital is embedded in the culture. It can shape employee behavior, including not defrauding the company or even not offering bribes to other businesses. Bribes are considered legal and okay in many countries, but the United States comes down hard that bribes for favoritism are not. It's part of the treat everyone equally idea. The research identifies 5 key factors in building organizational integrity. And again, I have the number 5. Research identifies 5 factors. Factor number 1, management takes action in case of misconduct. The company and the employees will know what the business is going to do, how they think about things, how they see things, how they want things to be if they take action when something happens. Employees can speak up about misconduct and don't fear that they'll be retaliated against. Retaliation is where they come back against you even though you did nothing wrong. All you did was point out the problem. Senior leaders and managers respect the employees. They treat the employees fairly. They speak to them. They listen to them. They know that they are the backbone of the company. And managers hold the employees accountable. They don't just let them slide through. They go after them if something's wrong. And if there's a high level of trust among the workers, everyone feels that everyone is being honest and fair. The full adoption and integration of an integrity system at all levels of an organization takes time and requires commitment. The culture of integrity is better than the regime of just compliance. Some aspects of preparing and presenting a good, high-quality PowerPoint presentation. This will be part of your assignment coming up in one of the units. Well, some of you have already completed this assignment, and I thank you for that. Most of you have not. These are some simple guidelines to help with the creative process of presenting material in this medium. Please note that the professor is not always the best model for the most efficient use of PowerPoint presentations. Sometimes necessity and time overbears the most correct format. Giving a presentation in PowerPoint. This PowerPoint takes you through the stages involved in the planning and delivery of a presentation. Consideration will also be given to the effective use of PowerPoint slides in your presentation. A good presentation has a clear structure, encourages independent thinking, uses clear explanations, and is delivered with enthusiasm. Your presentation should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the beginning, tell your audience what you're going to say. In the middle, the body of the presentation, say what you're talking about. And at the end, tell them what you said. Repeat it as a summary. Plan your presentation. Choose your topic. Plan an outline. Build the talk from your outline. The slides do not show every word you want to say. Choose your delivery method. In this case, I do mine in PowerPoint with sound embedded on each slide. Then I make a video file of it and upload it to YouTube. There are several delivery methods to use, including video, PowerPoint, old overhead projectors, handouts, and whiteboards. I like PowerPoints and handouts and whiteboard to write on. I feel that a multiple system is best. Know your audience. It is important that your talk is geared to the knowledge level of your audience, how much they know about what you're talking about. Research your audience to avoid giving them things that are too much over their head, too complicated, too engineering oriented, for example. Do not talk down to your audience. Try to be respectful. Timing. Know the time constraints for your presentation and leave time for questions. A typical audience has an attention span of around 20 minutes, so try to get to the important points early. You notice 20 minutes, and then our talk today is going to be from 45 to 60 minutes. So you are expected to listen and take notes, even though it's more than 20 minutes. Add interest, use humor when appropriate, add sparkle. Demonstrations with live items also add interest. If you're using whiteboards and overhead projectors, use different color pens. Try to have local pictures at the top of the page, things at the bottom to remind them of what you're talking about. When you deliver your presentation, you introduce yourself, give your credentials, promote yourself in a way, tell your audience the rules. You expect them to sit and listen, no talking, no getting up and walking around. Please do not leave the room. You need to speak loudly and clearly to each person. You need to pace yourself. Don't talk too quickly. Don't move too slowly. Make eye contact as you're talking around the room. Try to read people's faces and see that they are hearing and understanding what you're saying. When you get to the end, bring it to a clear end. Make sure they know that's it. Ask for questions. Make it clear that questions are allowed at the end or as you go along. It is up to you to decide which you want, and you need to tell them that. If someone asks a question, the first thing you do in the speaker is repeat the question loudly so that everyone can hear it. Then you give your answer. PowerPoint slides need to be clear, easy to read and understand. Generally, rules include don't use more than 5 or 6 words in a title. Don't use more than 9 words per line. Don't use more than 7 lines of text per slide. It needs to be small enough amount of material on the page in a large enough font that people sitting in the audience can read it. Color is great for highlighting text, but too many different colors make it hard to read. You need to experiment with different backgrounds. Try not to have a pure white background. This mottled blue is pretty good. This is one of the buildings from the Cathedral of Learning in Hanoi where Confucius taught. I always liked the idea of students. Highlighting things with bold text. Underlining gets too busy sometimes. Italics can do okay, but bold is easy. If you use too many things like the bottom line, it gets confusing for people, and they have trouble trying to follow what you mean. Pictures, charts, and graphs are very useful in giving meanings. Don't pack too much into a slide. Try to make it very broad and general so people can understand. If you have different kinds of graphs, there are line graphs, pie charts, bar graphs, scatter charts. You have to find and choose what you think is going to be best to use. This is a line graph, which is very clear. It's not cluttered for this data. Pie chart's pretty good if you spell out the percentages around it. Bar chart, in this example, is pretty good, but it gives a little bit less information. And the scatter chart is pretty good, but the dots kind of get lost sometimes. So it just depends on the data. Tables are good depending on the information that you're trying to convey. Be better in a table. One last point to consider is once your presentation is ready, the last thing you need to do is practice, practice, and practice again so that you're ready to face your audience and deliver an interesting and informative